My friends, to begin, I want to pick up on the theme that Father Fernando shared with us this morning. It's true that I think one thing that distresses many Catholic parents is the day when their child begins to question his or her faith. Of course, not all kids express the sentiment to their parents for whatever reason. Some don't want to disappoint their mom and or dad. Some just don't want to be questioned endlessly about it. And some simply just do not want to rock the boat, so to speak. Don't want to go down a path that most likely is going to lead to arguments and hurt feelings and such. But my guess is that all young adults go through this in one way or another, whether they express it or not, whether they admit it or not. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Quite the opposite, my friends. I would argue that this questioning is so essential if one wants to move from a childlike faith to a more adult, thoughtful, committed type of faith. You know, to put it quite simply, there comes a time, or even many times over the course of a lifetime, when a person must make a conscious decision for themselves, answering the two really big questions. What do I believe? And why? Why do I believe it? There's something similar going on in today's gospel. Jesus asks his now famous, powerful question to his disciples. And quite naturally, for Jesus, he does not go about it in the simplest, most direct kind of way. He rarely does, if you follow the Gospels. He first asks them what other people are saying about him. What are the most predominant opinions about him? And they rattle off a few answers. And now Jesus is ready to ask his disciples the questions that he wanted to ask all along. But who do you say that I am? If there was any hemming or hawing at this point, it's not recorded in the gospel. Quite the opposite. Peter quickly jumps in and he emphatically declares that Jesus is the Christ. A+, Peter. You passed the test with flying colors. Well, at least up to this point. And then Jesus goes on to tell all the disciples about his impending passion and death at the hands of those who oppose him. But Peter, being Peter, wants none of that. He wants none of that. And Jesus minces no words, calling Peter Satan. That is dramatic stuff, my friends. And we don't know what Peter's reaction was, but he was probably wondering, why is he getting a scolding after he got the answer right? But Jesus, of course, had a point to make. He had a point to make. You see, my friends, once we come to an understanding of, an acceptance of Jesus as the Messiah, as the Christ, then our spiritual journey, our life of faith, has responsibilities. And our responsibilities do not suddenly end there. In other words, saying or even believing that Jesus is our God and Savior is not the end of something. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of a whole bunch of consequences and expectations and demands of such a belief. And those things are twofold. First, it requires an actual changing of our behavior, an interior and exterior transformation in which we begin thinking, seeing, and acting differently. And that's what James was getting at in our second reading. And he summed it up by saying, if faith does not have works, faith is dead. So let's never fool ourselves into believing that faith is about thinking the right things. It's about letting the things we embrace in faith manifest themselves in the way that we actually live, the way that we forgive, the way we show mercy, the way we have compassion, the way we have love. Faith is not some invisible thing we claim to have simply by praying the right words or accepting certain faith statements. Faith is only truly alive in the day-to-day choices we make in imitation of Jesus Christ. Anything else is just playing pretend. And the second group of consequences of believing and accepting Jesus as our God and Savior are the ones that are not so easy to quantify, not so easy to accept or to understand. And these are the challenges, the crosses that come with living a God-centered life, the denying oneself, the losing of one's life at the heart of faithful living. Sometimes it's going to mean we won't be understood or accepted by others. Sometimes it means we might face hostility, even rejection. Sometimes it means we might be asked to go the extra mile, to turn the other cheek, to forgive someone who has wronged us. In essence, these are things asked of us that are not easy. Things that are much easier to say no to than to embrace. Who do we say Jesus is, my friends? Fortunately, we don't have to try to answer that question in a vacuum. We have the sacred teachings of the church, prayed and argued over, protected, defended, and passed down for over 2,000 years. And we should never, ever take these teachings for granted and never take them lightly. But even with all that said, with all that means and implies, we still must answer that profound, life-changing question for ourselves. Jesus asked it of his disciples, and he asks it of me and you this very day. Who do you say that I am? You know, my friends, it might take us a lifetime to answer that question in a very complete way. But the living out of our answer is something that we can and we should be embracing today and every single day.